Okay, I'm glad to be here with you guys. See some familiar faces. So if you've had my intercultural communications at seminary, this is going to be a 45-minute presentation of a 15-week class.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys are wowing, and I probably went through about, 500 slides to come up with about 30 slides.
Oh.
So, and I'll probably get through about 10. And so, Transform, that's the conference that you guys are attending, Communication for Community. I love the C's. Communication, community. Hopefully, as you walk out, you'll recognize without community, communication is at best superficial. In the middle of my slide, I'll talk about a definition. Communication equals relationship. Just think about that a little bit. If you've been married for any number of years, you recognize that the longer you're together with your spouse, you really don't have to talk much, but you're really communicating. Why? Because that relationship has strengthened. You don't really talk a lot because you pick up the meaning from the context. So we call that high context culture. And so my mother-in-law speaks Korean, and I'm a poor Korean speaker because I came to America 50 plus years ago. But my mother-in-law, and she's been living at our house for the last 5 years, so we don't really have to talk much. We sit after dinner, and very few words are communicated, but our hearts are communicated just by the presence of being there together. And so I would say language is important to communicate specific instructions, but the relationship can be strengthened. Typically, I call this, shared experiences. My son and I, we do an extraneous hike every summer. We just came back from a 21-mile hike. Up in Mammoth. It's called Banner Peak. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ansel Adams. That's his favorite photo op. Ansel Adams, Banner Peak. But I rarely see my son. He's been out of the house for 11 years. Although he lives just down the street. He's a guy, I'm a guy. We don't really need to talk much. Okay, so I'll text him next year. Minaret Lake. Get ready, son. Minaret Lake next year is going to be even tougher than this 21-mile hike. Okay. So even though we're not really communicating with words, my son and I, because we have a relationship, and the shared experience is going to be key for Spanish speakers and Korean speakers. Coming together to celebrate something. I don't know if you're the pastor of the church.
I'm a leader, but not the pastor. Even as you're talking, though, something came to mind. I can partially answer my own question. That's basically what you're saying. I can answer Vicky in one word: food.
Yeah.
We share food frequently. Yeah.
It's huge, right? It's huge as a Christian because that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
Because Jesus is actually from a non-Western world.
Right.
Right? They call it Middle East, but that continent is called Asia. Yeah, very, very extended family culture. I would say, our kids with the grandmother, our kids are even poorer Korean speaker than me. They love each other. Yeah. Yes, sir.
how do we handle like communication between culture that may have like opposing views on the situation? Like some Eastern cultures are like value like honorifics and kind of that non-verbal respect, but some other cultures may not value that in the same way, or come off as like either disrespectful or like a non-consideration for like what we're familiar with. And how do you appease that between two sides, or is there like a biblical culture that we both adhere to kind of help?
I don't think there's a biblical culture. Yeah, I don't think there's a biblical culture. I mean, what is that? Is that Jewish? Do we all need to be Jewish? I mean, I think Paul answered that. Right? There's no biblical culture, but there are biblical principles. And we'll look at that with Jesus. I mean, what was Jesus? Jesus was a foreign culture to the Jews. What did he do? We'll talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's called incarnation. Okay. So if you are the spiritual mature person, just like Paul says, hey, you know what? For the sake of my younger brethren, I'm going to make the adjustment. Jesus said, for the sake of the humans, I will make the adjustment and go to them and become their culture, understand their culture. So that's incarnational. And so I would suggest that, you know, if there are two cultures in the church, they can be incarnational to one another, which means they have to understand the other culture. Yeah, I mean, for me to communicate, let's say with my mother-in-law, who is a very, you know, she's not a direct conversationalist. I don't talk to her. If I have an issue, I don't talk to her directly. Yeah, I mean, that would be very disrespectful. And so I would have to talk to my wife. And then she would have to talk to her older sister, who talks to her older brother, who's the oldest in the family. And then he would gently talk to the mom because he has a much stronger, talk about relationship. Because I can go directly to my mother-in-law and not communicate, talk to her. I think I'm communicating, but she knows, hey, why is this son-in-law talking to me directly? That's not communication from her side. Yep. I think I'm communicating. I'm just talking nonsense to her. Yeah, it's actually inhibiting communication with my mother-in-law because she doesn't receive it that way. So like right now, my focus needs to be, how are you understanding? Because if you're not understanding what I'm talking about, if I just start talking, and I see maybe two Korean speakers in here. 한국말로 하면은 아무것도 이해를 못 하시잖아요. I think, what is this foreign language talking? I'm communicating meaning, but if I want to really convey meaning, it has to be from the receiver's perspective. So to have a good conversation or resolving conflicts, as you were talking about, or understanding two cultures, I have to communicate in such a way that my mother-in-law understands it best, which is wife, older sister, older brother, bam. And then how's it come back? She knows the rule. Goes back to the son, older sister, wife, to me. If I'm interested in having good communication that builds community. Yeah, a lot of people think, I mean, this happens not just in Asian cultures. Look, I mean, if you live in a corporate or a large, that's typically how the political process works. A lot of people think, man, why is the political process such a mess? Well, that's because we got a lot of people in the world. And all of you guys, I'm sure in a church, why is church politics such a mess? There's people. You get two people. I mean, I've been married for 35 years, know my wife most of my life. Since she was 4, I was 9. And I'm a professor of intercultural communications. Every day we have issues communicating. That's just how it is. And if you don't think you have issues communicating with your spouse, with your family, with your church people, come on now, you got to wake up. Yeah.
You know, it occurs to me that obviously, I'm stating the obvious, it's very complex. Because within, like, think of my church, there are going to be, say, Korean folks there, some of whom have been here longer than 50 years, some of whom don't speak a word of English, some of whom we could communicate with face to face, some of whom in a family would have to go up that hierarchy. Your view is different from your mother-in-law's view, but yeah. So man, it's not a cut and dry thing.
I would say communication is impossible.
Yeah.
How can I mean, I told you my wife, she is Korean American. I've known her, I'm 60, for 51 years. We grew up in the same church.
Nice.
Yeah. And I would just have to say, who is this woman?
Yeah. Well,
How can I understand her? Really? I'm a man. Okay. I can sleep on dirt. I'm an outdoors guy. Okay. I mean, you know, she needs clean sheets. And so it is impossible. Yeah. Thank God we're Christians.
Amen.
I'm telling you, if you're not a Christian, and God's not helping you, forget communication. How can you understand what the other person is thinking? Well, God's got to help you. Yeah, I love being a Christian. You know, I was an engineer. I was a systems guy. I like answers. God gives answers. Communication, relationships are impossible without God. It's like, man, I want more of that. Really? Don't you? Don't you want to understand yourself and others? And how is that possible? It's only through God. I'm no fool. Trust me. A lot of people think, wow, man, you believe in that? I said, you don't believe in that? You're the fool. I mean, who is a fool? Somebody who does not know God. I mean, that's what the Bible says.
Yes.
They don't even know they're fools.
Yes.
All right. I better get into some of this stuff. But you know, I'll just give you some of the slides. So this is the kind of stuff that I teach. I think it's critical, intercultural communication. So that is a required class in our Master of Divinity. We might be the only school that require that class, because we had to fight for that many years ago. How can you not have that class as a required course for those that are preparing for ministry? I don't know how many people are in here, but all of us have different cultures. Your friend, your family member sitting next to you, that's a different culture. That's a different culture. Okay. What was that? I was trying to do some video, right? That little commercial. I was trying to show that commercial. Is that going to be possible?
Yes.
No.
好容易變咗簡單啊！就咁做骨頭。大家飲杯，飲杯。得啦！大家食啊！好嘢啊！食啊！我飲埋先。The English believe it's a slur on your host's food if you don't clear your plate. Whereas the Chinese feel you're questioning their generosity if you do. At HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge. Which is why we have local banks staffed by local people in over 80 countries across the globe. HSBC.
I love that video, really. That's so much fun. Oh. Okay. All right. So building community across cultures begins with understanding, obviously, one another's cultures. Anybody speak Cantonese? Nobody speaks Cantonese. Sorry, I don't either. So, and the gentleman, the British gentleman, he was in trouble. I mean, those are huge eels. I love eels. I actually don't like eels in broth like that. I like eels kind of barbecue, kind of the sushi style. That's one of my favorite things to eat. But he didn't really understand from the host perspective. He actually wasn't thinking. He was operating under his cultural assumptions, which was just like this guy said, hey, British, you gotta finish what's in front of you. But the Chinese culture is, if you finish something as a good host, what do you have to do? Bring more. Even if you have to go next door, borrow. Yeah, I don't know if you know that's part of the culture. Yeah, Koreans, it'll be not, I mean, hopefully they don't do this anymore. In the old days, if you have a building project, Koreans will sell their house, become homeless, sell their house, put it in the pot for the building project. Not very biblical, but that's not Christian principle, that's Korean cultural principle. And so building community across cultures begins with understanding one another's cultures, values, and basic assumptions. I mean, that's a fun little video, but it packs huge consequences for us. So some of you guys talked about having, a number of cultures on your campus. If you're going to relate better, if you're going to relate to those various cultures, you're going to have to learn a little bit. And how do you learn that? And we'll get into that just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they're like, hey, let's get together for football. There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to happen. I mean, this is football. I mean, I grew up in Korea, so this is football, but I spent, a long time in America. So when somebody says football, it's like when a Korean guy comes and says, hey, let's play football Saturday, I'm going to make sure, hey, are you talking about American football? Or are you talking about the rest of the world football? Okay, so. Yeah. This is a case study that I do in my class, and let me just read it real quick. Your coworker asked you to graduation lunch along with her dissertation committee members and her boyfriend. At the end of lunch, you notice a slight hesitation when the check arrives. You feel the tension around the table with everyone reaching for their wallets. So this is a graduation lunch, and you've been asked to it. And so this is a doctoral graduation lunch with your coworker, the doctoral committee. It seems and her boyfriend. It seems surprising. The boyfriend is not picking up the tab since the lunch special. We're all under $10. To avoid your coworker losing face, you reach over and take care of the bill, which ends up being under $100, including tip.
Where is that?
You drive. It's lunch special. Lunch special. $8.95. $8.90. And if I went to Monterey Park, anybody from that area, San Gabriel Valley? Monterey Park would be it'd be $30. Yeah, like ABC, NBC, those Cantonese places, $2.99 for lunch. Flounder special. Okay, it's inflation, $3.99. Seriously, I ate it for $2.99. I'm thinking, what? And then you come back for dinner, it's $12.99. Yeah, so they know the tricks. But you drive, so you pay, you drive away from the lunch with a bad taste in your mouth thinking, she wasn't even a close friend, just a coworker. But what would you have done? So let's say you're the coworker, you've been invited to her graduation. Her boyfriend is there. And then, her committee members. The check comes. No, nobody's picking up the check. So, getting too excited. Everybody's reaching for their wallets. Okay, so who would pick up the check? Anybody pick up the check? Who would pick up the check? Raise your hand.
The ones who invited.
Let's say you're that friend. You're that friend. You've been invited to your coworker, not even a good friend, not even your best friend, not even your relative. Would you pick up the check? Raise your hand if you would pick up the check yourself. What would you do? Dutch. Everybody pays on their own. Everybody. Yeah, see, to me, that would be great shame to this graduate. It's her graduation. Okay. Actually, I was this friend, not a friend, sorry, coworker. Yeah, because I'm not her friend. I was just a coworker. As I was driving her, I'm thinking, why did she invite me? Maybe to pay for the lunch. I was so upset at her boyfriend. I thought, that's a loser boyfriend. That's a loser, but yes, sir.
In our culture, if you invite somebody, the one who invites pay for the bill.
Yeah.
That's a Filipino culture.
Yeah, in my culture, whoever is celebrating the big event, getting her PhD, she gets treated.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, she gets treated. Yeah, in the Filipino culture, you invite, you pay, even if it's your birthday.
Yes.
I mean, who does that? But man,
Water is better. That's coffee.
sorry. So depending on the culture, yeah. So that. And so our decisions are made. Your decision, what you just said, your decision is made from your worldview. What is that? Simply, it's how you see the world. Filipinos sees the world. I grew up with Filipinos at Walnut. I went to Walnut High School many years ago. Walnut still has lots of Filipinos. Walnut, West Covina up there, Azusa and Amar.
Yes.
I go to that Jollibee right there all the time. Got Seafood City up there. Yeah, I mean, I used to like shopping there. I do remember they're a very hospitable culture, but we make decisions based upon the way we see the world. I mean, what is a worldview? Values, beliefs, and convictions that are fundamental in your culture. So that lunch, you might think, well, that's nothing. But for an East Asian, for a Korean, for my coworker to lose face, and her doctoral committee member, I mean, these are older professors. For them to reach into their pocket, I'm thinking, no, don't do it. I mean, I was feeling the shame for this coworker. Can you imagine? I mean, just think about that. Okay. you have these kind of important people and they're reaching for their pockets. And so that shame caused me to cough up $100. And then, of course, I learned my lesson very quickly. You want to make sure that when you get invited, I mean, I really didn't understand that culture myself. Thank you. Very kind of you. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with Dutch pay culture. Dutch pay. So my youngest daughter is going to get married next year, and we're meeting her fiance's parents for the very first time after church on Sunday. And so my wife is like, hey man, you better call that restaurant and tell them that nobody pays except me. Yeah. So I'm going to call and say, hey, this is so-and-so, we're going to have a family, dinner. I'm going to give you my credit card number right now. Yeah, none of this, I got to go to the restroom, that kind of business, because I mean, the other guy could have done the same thing ahead of me. So this is the culture that we live in. As a Korean, if I don't pay, who looks bad? Well, my daughter's going to look bad, and for the rest of her life, she'll have that ding on her life. Just over what, $100 soon, whatever it may be. Yeah. So if you see people fighting over a check, I mean, that's for real. That's for real. I had like a student lunch with one of my students, and then she brought her mentor and then a couple other pastors to the same restaurant instead of industry. And I said, hey, this lunch is on me. And this student's mentor said, it's been paid for. I said, what? How can that be? I'm the one who hosted this meeting. Well, this pastor happens to be a Korean American guy. But he said his wife told him that if you don't pay, don't come home. Yeah. So that's the kind of culture we're talking. How do you learn that culture? Well, how do you learn culture? You live and learn. I've been here 51 years. I'm still learning American culture. Actually, I mean, I don't know American culture very well. I know Southern California culture. Actually, I mean, what's Southern California? I mean, I grew up in LA. I grew up in Koreatown before it was Koreatown, early 70s. And so most of my life, I spent in Yorba Linda. I'm familiar with Yorba Linda culture. The culture is going to be fairly specific. When somebody says, SoCal, I hate that term, but that's what we've come to. SoCal and NoCal. NoCal, N-O. Somebody have a question? Yes,
I
sir.
have an important question. You and I don't know each other, but would you like to go to lunch next week?
Here's what I'll say to that. Here's what
He's Korean.
I'm not Korean.
You're right.
I'm not. No. I'm Korean American.
Yeah.
Because if when I visit Korea, they know they can smell something different.
Yes.
Yeah, they know. They know. And I try so hard. So, I mean, I do try hard when I go to Korea. I dress like that. This is not the way, a 6-year-old Korean man would dress in Korea. And typically, older guy would be in a suit and a tie somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shorts and flip-flops. That child from America, they know. Yeah, so because I'm a culture guy, I try to keep my mouth shut because I have an American accent when I speak Korean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. So you said complicated, very, very. I mean, just think about that. Just a lit. If you don't, It's just so complicated. It really is. But what makes it cool is the relationship. Okay, if we know each other, like some of the church members that I've known, 1993. How many years ago is that? Is that like 29 years? I've known some of my church members. Oh no, 1990. So 32 years. Yeah, some of our church members, I knew them since they were like 10. And now they're 42. I married them. You know, they have their 불잔치, which is a first year birthday for the kids. You know, they're 42 years old. I was their children's pastor, youth pastor, college pastor, young adult pastor. Now I'm their adult pastor. And so for them, and you know, some of these guys are missionaries out in the field. We don't talk for years. They come back, boom. You know, we just catch up. Why is that? Because we have history, and not just longevity. It's real deep history. You know, I've known them since they were kids. I took them hiking, fishing, short-term missions, and so. Yeah, I mean, the key is going to be relationship, because that's the model of Jesus. Jesus wanted to communicate with us cross-culturally. What did he do? He knew if it was just words, he knew. He had to come in the flesh to model for us what it meant to develop community through incarnational communication. I mean, that's really the bottom line, right? I mean, you can't get away from that. That is the answer. All right, so, okay, so I mean, you guys know this culture, the iceberg model of culture. Culture is just a tip. Yeah, if you guys want these slides, you can, I think it's being recorded.
Yeah.
Or you can shoot me an email, Joekim, JOEKIM, at gsgatewayseminary.edu. Yeah, Joekim at gs.edu. And if you look at, I think it's Gateway something, for the Southern Baptist Convention, I did a little blip on my favorite foods in this area. That was kind of a mild version, though. It was a mild version. I didn't put the, you know, the live octopus that I eat and, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I knew I would scare people away if I directed them to 산낙지, which is live small octopus. And you cannot eat the big octopus live. It's a smaller version. It is very, very fresh.
Yeah.
These are squirming in your mouth. Right? Yeah. So but here's a lesson for you right there. It's one of my favorite things to eat. And so you would have to say, don't say, you know, you're crazy. You need to say, wow. Wow, that is different. Yeah, I mean, just think about that. Some of you guys have eaten balut. I've eaten balut. Yeah, balut is, if I explained it to you, you might come up and try to arrest me. Especially if you're like a PETA animal lover. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that. I mean, Koreans, we eat some stuff too, right? You know, I mean, those are not our pets that we eat. We do not eat our pets. Yeah, those are different types of, you know, doggies. Yeah. And actually, I think in Korea it might be illegal. Yeah, I've eaten it in different parts, like Mongolia. Mongolians eat their horses. They drink their horse milk, but don't let the horse milk ferment, because that'll be like drinking pretty hardcore alcohol. But that's what they drink, fermented milk in Mongolia. Yeah, some of the characteristics of culture. Yeah, you yourself can be Korean by culture. I mean, look at me. I mean, by culture, if I, you know, put my American hat on, I'm American. I'm speaking English. Yeah. I mean, I'm aware of American culture. So culture is learned. You know, it's hilarious. Koreans are all over the world right now. There is a Korean Finnish pop star. This guy looks like me, and he's speaking Finnish and singing in it. Wow. And I love watching these videos. I mean, YouTube has everything, right? So you got Koreans all over the world, and these guys have adjusted to their host culture, speaking their language. But they look exactly like me on the outside. But on the inside, culturally, they have learned it. So culture is not biological. I did not pop out of my mother's tummy holding chopsticks. Somebody had to teach me that. Yeah, in Japan, there's a huge crisis going on because the Japanese children don't want to use chopsticks. But forget chopsticks. Okay, I mean, they want to use fork and knife. What? Primitive. I mean, what? I mean, you know, the chopsticks are very delicate. Yeah. I mean, you cannot pick up a grain of rice with a fork. That's tough. Chopsticks. Yeah, I would say all things are, no, not all things are possible with chopsticks, but you know. All right. So the last one, ideal versus real. That's a huge concept. Okay. So a lot of immigrants come to America and they expect America to be a certain way. No, it's not the Brady Bunch, it's not Friends, it's not Cheers, I don't know what, Modern Family, you know, all of that. That's not it. That's not America. That's Hollywood. They expect that. Okay. One of the reasons why my mother-in-law came to America, you know, a long, long time ago, because she used to work for the American military in Korea. And she thought, and in the officers area, and you know, I mean, if you've been in the military, officers they're, you know, I mean, they're very cordial. And she thought, wow, if this is America, I need to go to America. I mean, she came to find out that's really not America, right? I mean, that's a small little segment. Ideal versus real. Yeah, not all Koreans are like me. You know, they're not skinny, they're not tall. I'm a little bit unusually tall for a Korean guy because I wanted to be tall. I was the youngest of three boys, and all my brothers were tall, and my mother-in-law was crying and praying that, you know, God would grow me. I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to be like 6'2". I think with shoes on, I'm like 6'3". So ideal versus real. Okay, so this is till 11:30. Okay. All right, so systems of culture. This is what I'm talking about. Many people think culture is just, why is it so not clear? Yeah, they look at the macro thinking that's what culture is. It is true. Yeah. Is there an American culture? I guess, you know, hot dogs, hamburgers, apple pie. Is that American culture? Yeah, maybe. How about the mesoculture, Western culture, Pacific Northwest culture? How about California culture, Southern California culture, Orange County culture, LA culture, IE culture? I mean, you know, high desert culture, that's meso. How about micro? That's individual. Yeah, I am Korean, I am American, Korean American, but I'm not really joking. That's my, you know, my mother, of course, our family was Christian, three boys, Samuel, Daniel, Joseph. That's how I got Joseph. You know, my mom, so you can tell a generation, you can tell a Korean generation by their first name. My father's name is John. My mother's name is Esther. Just, you know, just classic stuff. But my children, it's Kaylee with a C. I like Caleb, so Caleh, Kaylee Christian. I didn't like my middle name my dad just stuck my Korean middle name in me. So I don't like that. I want to be American. So Kaylee Christian, I gave all my kids middle name, English name. I should have just given Korean names, but yeah, now I regret a little bit. Austin Wesley. So St. Augustine means radiance of God. Austin Wesley. And the bonus child, number 3, bonus child, Karis, because I needed a lot of grace with a K though. So if you meet a Karis, CH, typically that's going to be a Korean American pastor's child. I know so many Karis, Kim, Karis Lee, Karis Park, all Korean pastor's kid. Yeah, one of our students just had a baby girl, Korean guy, Karis. Yeah. So Karis Elizabeth. Elizabeth is God's promise of grace through this child to me. Yeah. So, it's a little bit different, right? That's a different generation. Now, I just became a granddad. And my daughter named her daughter Noah. I said, aren't you having a girl? So, yeah, Noah, N-O-A. Yeah. 2021's most popular female name in Israel.
Oh.
Noah. Yeah. Noah, Autumn. I said, what? Your daughter is born in summer. How can it be Noah, Autumn? She's like, I like the sound of it. I mean, we're talking micro culture. Yeah, all of us, you're a culture. We're different cultures. You guys know each other?
Husband.
There you go. But different culture. Trust me, different culture. Okay, so understand that. Okay, is there anything? Oh man, I wish we could have done this one. So a helpful model for understanding culture. It's this concept of high and low context. Well, we'll just finish with this maybe. This is going to be critical. Okay, and there's so many culture models out there, but I would say this is probably the easiest and the biggest bang for the buck. Okay. Edward T. Hall, back in the, I guess in the 50s and 60s, this guy used to work for the State Department. And he said, wow, if we're going to be relating to people from different cultures, we're going to learn a little bit about culture. And he said, hey, looking at the world, we can probably group them into 2 large groups. High context. High context says you get most of the meaning non-verbally from the context. You read the room. I've been reading the room. Okay, and I've been looking at your non-verbals. Yeah, I mean, so that's what you do. You read the room. Okay? That's high context. That's majority world. That's majority world. And I would say that's more rural, agricultural, extended family. Okay, so a lot of people will say that's group oriented. People that are from a group oriented culture, that's rural, agricultural. They get most of the meaning from the setting, the context. I mean, if you're a farmer, you're gonna look at weather. You're gonna just see the lay of the land. Hispanic, African, Asian, Middle Eastern. That's like most of the world. Low context is going to be more Western world or urban setting. Urban, high tech. Low context. That says most of that information comes from explicit language. I mean, look at some of the statements that English speakers say. Give it to me straight. Write it down. Document it. That's high context. That's low context. I mean, I understand American culture, so I'm going to document a lot. But in the Korean context, it's just, you know, there's a concept called nunchi. Nunchi means eye power. You got to read the room. If you're not good at nunchi, if you're not good at reading the room, you're going to be in big trouble. They'll smile at you in front of you, but they're going to turn around and say, "This guy's a fool." Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. So read between if you don't know how to read between the lines, you're going to be in big trouble. Okay, so let me. Okay, so here's a good one. So low context people, low context. That's Western world. It's about rules and regulations. You break a rule, you're going to jail. Here, high context, you got rules. You got rules, but the bigger, bolder relational network. You break a rule, you know this guy, you know their cousin, you know their cousins, second husbands, whatever it is. So hey, we grew up in the same continent. It's like relational network. That works a lot. Yeah, I'm teaching through Judges 19, which is kind of really tough to preach. But this Levite was traveling, and who invites him in? Yeah, it is somebody from his hill country in Ephraim, the old farmer, because they're from the same area. That's what relational network means. 4 minutes. Okay. Culturally proficient. Yeah, we can't do that. Sorry. And so, is that John Kerry?
Yep.
Do you know who he was? What position he had? He's like the top dog of interculturalness in America. What is he doing? Do you know this flag? I hope you know a little bit of history between Korea and Japan. And Japan and the Philippines. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Korean flag.
Yeah.
Korean flag. Okay. This guy is a then Korean Moon Jae-in, Korean president. I mean, what is this guy doing?
Bowing.
What kind of bow is that? And the Korean bow. It's the way.
The way.
Yeah. Maybe Victor will teach us how to do it properly. Yeah, I mean, so it is a Thai, not Korean way. It's the Thai way.
Oh.
Yeah, of course, LeBron is no. Touching the princess, soon to be queen. You don't touch royalty. You don't touch royalty. Okay, I'm Korean, so I'm a little bit biased. I mean, she was a Korean president. Of course, Koreans like to throw their ex-presidents in jail, but so she was impeached in jail.
Oh.
Yeah, she was impeached and thrown in jail. Koreans like to do that. But before she got thrown in jail, Bill Gates, what's he doing?
Shaking hands.
With his hand in his pocket.
That's being disrespectful.
Very disrespectful. Yeah. Doesn't matter if he's rich. Koreans, I mean, this was a huge article for Koreans. Okay. Hand in his pocket. I mean, typically, at least, you may not do two hands, but you want to do a little bit of like one of these. Yeah. The tradition is, it's like moving your long sleeve out of the way and saying, "Hey, I got no weapons in here." That's what this is.
Oh.
I got no weapons.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see that a lot, China and Africa too. And then President Barack Obama. So I would say this guy and this guy, they're trying to be culturally appropriate, but trying way too hard. Way too hard. He's like, "Hey, I know I'm in Asia. What do I do? What do I do? Well, I do one of these." He's like, wrong country. You're in the wrong country. And so President Obama, he knows he's got to bow in Japan.
So
Yeah.
Okay, so look.
he combined both.
So this is the emperor. This is the emperor. America is a superpower, the greatest power in the world. The Japanese emperor knows it. Okay. So the president should have stood up. I mean, look at his face. Like, oh, I'm so embarrassed for you, brother. I'm so embarrassed because he should have, even though he's older, he should bow a little bit lower. Japan lost the war.
Yeah.
They know.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the lower you go, it means you are lower.
Exactly. Yeah, my father taught my dad's a military guy. He said, you see anybody older than you, you better do one of these.
But don't you give respect to the elderly?
You do, but it's interesting. Okay, when I was a little bit younger, and a lot of the Korean pastors that were in my class, yeah, they would show me more respect, which I felt very uncomfortable. And so I try to return more respect back to them. And so he's trying, but not appropriate for the context. Okay, sorry. I think we're done. Communication is a relationship. Okay, so if you think you're communicating, here's my check. If you think you're communicating, check how strong your relationship is. If you don't know that person, you're not communicating. Tell yourself that we just haven't communicated. Maybe we talk. I mean, here, it's kind of fun and games a little bit, and I'm giving you information. And I don't know how much of what I've shared communicated, but because we're in a context of a little bit of shared trust, you know that I'm a Christian, I teach at the seminary, all that develops a little bit of relationship. I'm not a stranger, Gateway. Okay, so that's why communication is a relationship. Maybe the last lap, and then we'll wrap it up. In God's wisdom and compassion, God has brought the world right to our doorsteps and afforded us the outreach opportunity of a lifetime. The only obstacle to American Christians reaching the lives of these future international leaders is our own lack of internationals in general, not just leaders. I mean, the world is here. The world is in this classroom. Okay, how do we get to know it? Well, you have to ask. I mean, I'm familiar with Filipino. I mean, like I said, I eat blood soup and all that kind of stuff. Lumpia. Okay, I can do hands or fork and knife. Okay, Jollibee. Hey, come on. I'm Filipino. I eat a Jollibee. Okay. And so what do? I dive in like Jesus. I dive in. I go incarnational. Okay, and I ask to the Jollibee people, okay, what should I eat? Spaghetti and chicken. Yeah, so I want to learn. I want to be the learner. Jesus, he came into our culture, learned our language, ate our food. There you go. Let me pray. And if you're going to stick around and ask me questions, we'll do that since I've gone 3 minutes over time. Sorry. God, we pray that you would give us a passion for people around us. God, we pray that you would empower us to be incarnational. Well, not simply because we enjoy cultural food, because that is your command to us. You want us to go, start where we are, go beyond it to Samaria, to go beyond that to the ends of the world. And the world is here. So God, we pray that you would give us the passion to reach across cultures, to create community for your kingdom purposes. Today, help us to do that. In Christ's name, amen. All right, I'll stick around for a few minutes. If you guys have questions, you can just come up. Just come up and talk for a little bit.